Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Facebook Live today. We're doing something today that we haven't done in quite a while, and that is a question and answer period about MyHeritage DNA, something that, these questions come in all the time from our viewers, whether it be on a Facebook Live or just on our Facebook page or to the MyHeritage support team. So lots of questions that get asked around, and I know that a lot of people have things they've been wondering about MyHeritage DNA that they would love to know. So now's your chance. We have this great Q&A session where you'll be able to ask our support rep, and he's very, very knowledgeable, and we're so excited to be able to finally be doing this. I know we've had a lot of requests for sessions like this coming in, so we're super excited. Thank you to everyone for joining us. If you haven't done so yet, please let us know where you're tuning in from today. I see that everyone just jumped into the questions, but we'd love to hear where you're tuning in from as well. So let us know where you are in the world, what the weather's like over there. We thank you all for joining us. I know it might not be the best time of day, depending on where you are. Let's see, I see Colleen from Queensland, Christina from Latvia. So thank you all for joining us. We're so excited about this session. And of course, even if it's not your question that's being answered at the moment, there's just so much to learn about DNA. It's a topic that, even from other questions that other people ask, it's just so useful. Such a great session. I see we have Anne from Canada, Elaine from sunny and warm Florida, Donna from Massachusetts. So thank you everyone for tuning in here with us today. We're so excited to have you in our audience. We'll be doing a giveaway, of course, for today's session. So since we'll be talking about MyHeritage DNA, no better prize to give away than a MyHeritage DNA kit. So we'll be giving a DNA kit to one lucky viewer. And of course, if you already have a DNA kit, you know that you can give it to friends and family members to test themselves. So we'll talk, I'm sure, later about the benefits of testing, everyone in your family and why that's so important. So to enter, all that you have to do is just let us know about the most surprising thing you found out about your family history. Of course, if it's about DNA, even better, since we're talking about DNA today. So let us know the most surprising thing you found out about your family's history. We'd love to hear about it. Let us know in the comments section. And at the end of today's show, after we get through a number of questions about MyHeritage DNA, we'll be awarding a MyHeritage DNA kit to one lucky viewer in the audience, and we'll send that out to them. So in the meantime, of course, throughout today's session, please, please put your questions in the comments section. We hope to get to as many DNA questions as possible. Unfortunately, we might not be able to get to every single one. I know there's always, hundreds of questions that come in here, but we do hope to get to a great number of questions that will be useful and helpful to all of you in the audience. So if you have a DNA question, something that you've been wondering, something that, you've wanted to know, even if it doesn't matter what level, whether it's beginner or intermediate, let us know. Don't be afraid to put your question in the comments section, and we'll be collecting them. And we hope to get to a great number of questions today. So to get started, I'd like to introduce our support representative that we have with us today, Alex Finley. And Alex has been with MyHeritage for a few years. I'll bring him onto the screen so that he can tell us a little bit more about his experience with MyHeritage DNA and how he's so knowledgeable in the subject. So let me bring him onto the screen. One moment. Let's get him on here to say hello to all of us. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Esther. Thank you so much for having me online, and thanks to everyone for joining. I'm really glad to be here.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today. We're so excited to have you. We love having people from our support team on for these sessions. They're really, really fantastic.
Great, thanks. I'm really glad to be here. I know you asked for an introduction. I've been working in the company for a year and a half. I started off in core or basic support, and I was there for 6 months, and I've been in DNA for a year. I've also been a MyHeritage user on and off for about 12 years, which also helps because I can see where people are coming from. Those of you who've joined us today, you have never spoken to me on the phone, but we may have corresponded by email. I work out of the head office in Israel, and I am an email support agent for DNA.
Great. So maybe some of our viewers have corresponded with you.
Indeed.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, we have a number of questions lined up for you, Alex. Should we kind of dive in and I'll ask you the questions and you can, bat them out of the park?
Okay. Let's go for it.
Okay. So I'll start with a question that we have here from Valerie. And Valerie asked, is getting a DNA test really worthwhile? If other family members haven't had one, you're not likely to find them, are you? So this is kind of a general question.
That's a great question, and it's a really fair question. I think that getting a DNA test with us is worth it because we have a pretty large database, and you might not find those close family members of yours who you want to, but you will find people, and you can reach out to people on our system, and you can determine how you are related to them and where you share a common ancestor. I also must point out that we have a feature that allows you to download your raw DNA data. And if you feel comfortable uploading your raw DNA data to a platform that you trust, not a platform of ours, you can do so. We have an option to do that. So overall, I think that, it's getting a DNA test with us is a great way to just reach out. And more and more people are buying. And as someone who also uses this product, I get my parents and I get these emails quite often about new matches of varying distance. So I'm enjoying it, just having tested my DNA and leaving it in the system and seeing more and more people come through. So I recommend it indeed.
So that's a great point that even, if you don't have a match today, maybe if that person tests with MyHeritage over the coming weeks or months, you could find a match. And we actually have some stories like that in, I think on the MyHeritage blog of users who test, and then it's only, let's say, a year later where, somebody else tests and they find that match that ends up being the clue to their, their family mystery. Okay, let's take a question here. Let's see, from so many good questions. I don't know who wrote this. It's unlabeled in terms of the name. It came from our YouTube streaming. Is it true that you sell our DNA information? So this is, I know it's a hot button topic about privacy and protection of DNA information for people who test on MyHeritage or people who upload their DNA data from other services to MyHeritage.
So my direct answer to that is absolutely not. Please just let me take a second here. I would advise you to Google the MyHeritage privacy policy, and you can see more details. MyHeritage privacy policy on Google. It's probably the first one that comes up right away. Yeah, and you can see more details about how we handle people's data and people's privacy. And we feel that your personal data is sacrosanct. We're not going to sell people's DNA data ever at all. And you know what? We also have great privacy settings now for your DNA. So if you get a kit with us and you don't want to look for DNA matches, maybe you just want to see what your ethnicity estimate is, you can do that for each and every single kit that you manage. You can fine tune your privacy settings for your own kit. Great question, by the way, and an important topic.
Yeah, very important topic that I think, prevents a lot of people from jumping in and, trying the product and really.
Yeah, it's good. It's good that we got that one out there and that people can know that they can adjust the features, they can fine tune their privacy for each kit that they manage.
Okay, this question is from Emma. It's a little bit about family trees, but I think it's connected. She asked, One question I have is, can you block a person from seeing your family tree? Can a family member only see your family tree if you approve them to see it? So just in terms of, I know when you get DNA matches, you're able to, connect with the other person. So what is the privacy like in terms of that, seeing the other person's family tree, that type of data?
Great question. If you want more of a fine-tuned answer, it would be best to reach out to like one of the privacy reps or a core rep. But I'm happy to answer as a MyHeritage user. I'm pretty pernickety with my family tree. I don't allow people to see. I don't allow people to see the actual tree itself. I've only recently allowed people to smart match with me. And I've allowed, which means that people can see who I have in my tree if they have that person with matching data in their tree. And what else? Yeah, you can switch off smart matching. You can switch off how people view your tree. I'm also pretty pedantic about who I let manage my tree. For example, I only let family members my family members from a specific branch become managers and members in my tree. And I ask my cousins, please just manage your line, and mom will manage her line with me, and we work it out that way. There are a lot of privacy settings also for your family tree and for DNA. So yes, you can customize that, and you can fly under the radar and do your own research if you want. Before I even started using online research, before I actually registered for MyHeritage, I used the Family Tree Builder. I actually just used it offline, which was great because I could put as many people in as I want and store as much info from my research as I want. So if you want to work completely offline with a MyHeritage product, we still have the Family Tree Builder available for download.
Okay. This is an interesting question here from Bernie. How do I know which is maternal and which is paternal DNA? So I guess Bernie's talking about the, when you get DNA matches. So how can somebody work to figure out, if a match is on their maternal side or their paternal side? This is a big issue that a lot of our new DNA users face. They don't know where to start when they get this list of matches that could be hundreds or even thousands of matches.
Well, for us, it's also, we can't start and give the same answer for every user. And I'm really glad that Bernie asked this one, because I get asked this a lot. And some people ask me this when they have such a low amount of matches and very distant matches, and it's hard to work with them to figure it out. And some people are very lucky. They have first cousins and half siblings, or even grandparents and parents who are still alive, who let them test their DNA. So I'm going to start with a basic method that I like to use before each and anything. And I opened up my own family tree just to show you how it works. I didn't quite know what sort of questions would come through. Welcome to the Findlay website. So when I look at my DNA,
Alex, we don't see it actually.
Sorry.
You have to just share it. Just share it again, and
Sorry, screen.
There we
go. Great. So let me jump to my matches. Can you see, Esther?
One moment. There we go. Perfect.
Okay, so when you jump to my matches, you can see that I was fortunate enough to have my parents agree to be tested. And I can export, and I have exported their DNA matches list. So I have both my parents, and I have one of my half siblings from my father's side, from a previous marriage from my father, and I have a maternal cousin. And this is a really good case to download and export DNA matches. And I actually use some sort of spreadsheet, and I make a comparison of paternal matches. So when my sister said to me, I want to be able to find, let me stop sharing and explain for a sec. My sister said to me, I want to be able to find my maternal matches, because my sister's mom, obviously I don't share matches with her. So it was quite an easy process of elimination. I just, a couple of minutes YouTubed how to eliminate matches that we do and do not have in common from my father. And I found my sister's matches. But if you're not as fortunate enough to have close relatives like your parents, I would recommend the Chromosome Browser first and foremost. And if you know that you have at least one second cousin who you know is paternal or maternal, then it makes it a little bit easier. So I'm going to share my screen again, and I'll just show you what I can do and how the Chromosome Browser works and why it's good for this. Go. I'm going to try and be as concise as possible and not go into too much detail about the Chromosome Browser yet, unless someone asks, because it's a bit of a lecture. So I have a couple of maternal matches. My first cousin is here, and my mother's first cousin is here. So that makes him a first cousin once removed. You can see that they've got nice high percentages. And we triangulate, which means that we have shared DNA segments that we have in common from my maternal side. And in order for people to triangulate in the Chromosome Browser, you all have to triangulate. So what happens if I want to determine if a match is paternal or maternal? I'm just going to add that match. Let's take one who I know is from my dad's side. That's quite obviously my half-sister from my father's side. She doesn't share any ancestry with my maternal side. All the triangulations have disappeared. Okay? So all of your matches that you use in the Chromosome Browser have to triangulate themselves in order to match with your known matches. Now, the further and further away you get, when you start getting to a known third cousin, and I've got a few known third cousins in my tree, there's some segments that you didn't inherit that won't match, even if it's someone who's very distant. So let's see. This is another maternal match. Let's see if she matches a little bit further away. No, I have no triangulation with Cheryl, which means that I know which side of my maternal line she comes from now, which is great because I'm aware of my family history and my genealogy on my mom's side from my great-great-grandparents within the spectrum. And I can keep doing this to see if another match does pop up, and if he does triangulate, and which side of the spectrum he matches. Okay, I have a small triangulation with this match with my two closer cousins. So I know more or less where to look that he is a maternal match. And that's one really great way to use it, is to use this tool. Let's stop sharing. There we go.
Okay. Thank you. And we do have, there are actually blog posts that we have about the Chromosome Browser if people want to kind of
read I'm happy to go more in depth with it now, or you can visit our blog posts. Remember, what I did was I've also downloaded lists of my mum's matches and my dad's matches because I have that luxury. I recommend that people do a couple of familiarity free YouTube courses or something on Excel spreadsheets to be able to do that, so that when you get more and more matches, you can learn how to eliminate them and sort them out. And you're better equipped to use the Chromosome Browser when you do so.
Definitely. We have a question here from Brian, who asks, realistically, what are the minimum levels on the different measurements below which it is most unlikely to be of use? So I'm thinking maybe Brian means, it could be two things, I guess. Brian, if you're there, maybe you can clarify, but I guess it could be, if you have an ethnicity result from a DNA test and it's under a certain amount.
Or maybe it's matching segments, the most minimal amount of centimorgans you share.
Or it could be that, or it could be a DNA match of, 0.something%. And then is it worth kind of looking into that, to be useful? So I'm not sure what he's referring to, but maybe you could just kind of touch on what percentage.
I would really like to, but I'm afraid that's going to be a bit of a lecture. I will be as concise as possible. So
he wrote in matching segments.
Matching segments. Okay, that's great. So when you start getting to 0.4% or 0.1%, you're dealing with like a much far away range. Assuming that there's no endogamy, this is probably like a fifth cousin, fourth cousin once removed range, okay? And we test close to 7,000 centimorgans. And then you start testing, like you get to these low percentile 0.3 or 25 centimorgans, they start being less reliable, okay? But I'm happy to say in my heritage, if they've passed our conservative matching thresholds, they may actually be well worth looking into. And what I mean by like conservative matching thresholds, you'll notice that some of those low percentile matches have like low confidence and medium confidence. And that's because we have such conservative thresholds. We reserve the right to let people know that maybe if they descend from like an endogamous population like Ashkenazi Jews or Finns, that maybe they have these false positives where the ancestors passed down segments that are similar, but the people are not actually related. So you'll see medium confidence or low confidence on some of those lower percentile tags. And I'm glad we do this, because we would hate for like our paying users to waste time and energy in something that may not be worth it for them. And like, I'm not allowed to mention names, but let's say the next question that usually comes up in a workday after this, when someone asks me this, is like, oh, well, I uploaded a kit from somewhere else, which is great because we want people to use this feature. But I got thousands more hits. I got thousands more matches. And then I look at these thousands more matches, and they're all like 25 centimorgans or 50 centimorgans on a good day. And you have to take into account that when you use another kit with us and you upload it, number one, that company, whichever one, probably prefers not to use as conservative algorithms as us. And maybe you'll get more matches, but you'll probably have a lot more false positives. Number two, you may get different lower percentile matches with your uploaded kit than you will with us. And it could still be worth looking into. And here's why. Like us and other companies, we test around about 700,000 genetic markers called single nucleotide polymorphisms. I'll just call them SNPs for short. And we don't actually test the same ones. So when you get to that, Brian, if you're still with me, when you get to that distant sort of match level, sometimes it's worth to follow up on that if you've uploaded data from another company, and it's worth exploring. Yeah, so again, with our kits, I can say that you'll probably get a low confidence or medium confidence tag on those like 0.3 percenters. And in conclusion, it's up to you whether you want to take that tag into consideration and expend your time, following up on that research.
Okay, we have a question here from Stacy. She said, it's hard when you have matches, but you can't place them as you don't have their details. So I guess this is a common problem, people who keep have very few details, maybe don't have a family tree. I know MyHeritage has great stats in terms of having most DNA users do have a family tree, as opposed to other companies, I think, where that's less common. Maybe you can elaborate on that, Alex.
Okay, pardon me one sec. Look, it is a difficult situation, because sometimes you reach out to people and you want to get more clarity about where they fit. What would I advise someone to do if you've got like a third cousin who doesn't respond to you, and we can't really tell anyone to respond to you because the internal messaging system is theirs. It's their private messaging system in our platform. We can't tell them, hey, someone messaged you, get back to them. My advice to you is, if you've got like a third cousin and you want to know how you fit in with them, I wouldn't rule out classic paper and pen genealogy. And we've got a great family tree platform for that. And you can keep building your family tree, even if they don't get back to you. You see they've got a tree of 200 people and you send them a message, and what can you do? You keep building your family tree, okay? You keep accepting record matches that you feel are as accurate as possible. Smart matches, you accept those as well if you're 100% sure of them. I like to reach out to a potential user before confirming a smart match, because sometimes, like, I've had relatives who've gotten a baptism date and a birth date confused, and we want to just clear the air and make sure that we're on the same wavelength and correct dates. And how does this tie in with DNA? When you accept smart matches and record matches, it helps stimulate the algorithms for our theory of family relativity feature. And maybe within a few months to a year, this user who didn't get back to you, doesn't matter. We show you a couple of theories about how you could be related to this user if you still haven't been able to add them to your tree from formal genealogy on our platform. So I would advise you, in conclusion to that, I say persist. Keep building your tree. Keep trying to find that match on the tree. Keep accepting your record matches and smart matches. Don't move your DNA kit away from your profile, because that will reset the theory algorithm. And hopefully you will get, it takes a long time, but you may get a theory of family relativity to show you how you could be related to that person.
Okay, we have a question here from Robert.
Oh,
Robert,
I can't hear you.
oh, how about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, maybe some sort of a delay here. Sometimes we have technical difficulties. I see a question here from Deborah. How often are the theories run? We actually have good news for you. I think there might be good news in the near future, Deborah, but in general, it's every few months. We tend to kind of run all that data and introduce all of our DNA users with new theories of family relativity. So we have a question here from Robert, who asks, do you continue to refine DNA analysis for places of origin and DNA markers? So is that like a continuous?
Yeah, I'm glad that Robert asked that question, because when it comes to how often do we upgrade our platform, the previous question was how often we release theories of family relativity, which is very common. And the next one is how often do we refine our population groups, and how often do we upgrade our ethnicity estimate? I'm glad that you asked that. I cannot give an exact date on when our next ethnicity estimate upgrade will be. And I cannot tell you how it's going to affect different reference populations and genetic groups that we have in our current version. But I am really happy to say that it is in the works to upgrade our ethnicity estimate and to refine the places of origins of our data, of our reference populations. And the only people we can thank for this, well, it's a combination of our development team who work really hard on it and our users who agree to the informed consent. If you read the informed consent thing, where millions more users agree to let us refine our results based on their DNA. So a big thank you. I'm sorry I can't give a direct date, but just like you, I'm looking forward to the next ethnicity estimate update and how the population groups and genetic groups will be refined.
And of course, the best advice is really to stay tuned on our blog, blog.myheritage.com, and that's where we announce any update, whether it be an update to theory of family relativity or any other DNA tools and features, which we're always working on. So definitely make sure to stay tuned there, and hopefully you'll see lots of new things coming out over 2022 and into 2023. Let's see. Ada asks, can our DNA change?
Sorry, our DNA. No, unless you do something like you have a bone marrow, like your results with us will always stay the same. If you send in the same sample year after year, it's going to stay the same. People who have maybe had a bone marrow transplant or blood transfusion, they may notice some changes and will have to wait before they send in their DNA. The exact times to wait are in our help FAQ. And I also think if you've had chemotherapy, it won't change your DNA at all, but it's just harder to extract buccal cells from your cheek. So people who've had medical treatments like that are advised to wait a little bit so they get the exact results. But no, I think a normal SNP only mutates every 120 to 150 years, the more generations it goes through. So.
Okay, we have a question here from Nicole. It's a little more specific about her case. So she says that she has a DNA match that is 245 centimorgans across 20 segments. I know which side they are on, but I can't figure out the connection. My question is, do you think that 20 segments is strange with this size of centimorgans?
I think it's a lot. I think it's great to go on. And because it's personal and specific, I would ask you to send me more details over the email, if that's possible, Esther. I don't really want to discuss stuff that's too personal, but I have helped people pinpoint, DNA matches that are this large in the past, and in the present, I still help people put DNA matches like this in perspective. So would that be possible to reach out to me over email and we can take a look?
Yeah, definitely. We can.
Oh,
We can definitely figure that out for sure. Okay, Michelle said, how long does it take to get any information when you do your test? So waiting times and the whole process from the time that you take your sample and send it into our lab.
Okay. First of all, I can't account for all the different postal services. Once you've sent your DNA to us and you haven't received a notification after 44 calendar days that it hasn't been received by the lab, then you've got to reach out to us, because that's a long time to even get to the lab, 44 days. In a good month, it can take 3 to 4 weeks, but sometimes we have really busy months and it can take a bit longer. So it really depends on the backlog at the lab. But yeah.
And which seasons would you say are kind of more busy in terms of DNA?
Okay, well, I'm not a sales agent. I've noticed a couple seasons, but I'm a support agent, so I'm going to have to stick with what I know.
Okay. Let's see what other questions we have here. And of course, if you haven't yet, please feel free to put your question in the comments section so we can get to it. We're trying to get to as many as we can. Let's see. Okay, Richard asks, he says, my parents and I are Ashkenazi Jews, and according to the Chromosome Browser, we all share 8 triangulated segments. Does that mean that my parents share common ancestry? They both have families coming from, I guess, the same areas. So does that mean that they could be, I know there's a lot of endogamy and, and that type of ethnicity. So what can you tell us about that?
I also, coming from Ashkenazi descent, I would actually like to take a look at the bigger picture as well as your chromosome browser. So again, I would like for specific questions to be reached out to me over the email. What I would advise first is to, in any situation for any user who has parents or relatives from an endogamous population, and you want to see if parents may have a common ancestor, or cousins from both spectrums may have a common ancestor, the first and easiest thing to do is just to download the matches to the Excel spreadsheet and use an algorithm to eliminate or identify the same names in either column. That's the first and the easiest way to do it. Or if you think you can find a name, or you could type in the name of one relative into the DNA match search bar and hope it doesn't come up. Another thing to do, if it's from an endogamous population, most people who are not will match with their parents at like 49 point something %. So maybe if you match with a parent at a slightly higher percent, it could be an indication, and it could be worth your while just to download and look at your DNA matches, or search for potential common matches. Again, doesn't just apply if parents have common ancestry. You can also have different cousins on different sides of the spectrum who have common ancestry.
Okay. Shauna asked, I have a couple of cousins with high centimorgans that I've reached out to, but I haven't heard back. I only know which side they're from, but I'd love to know how they're related. So, any advice for the best ways to reach out to people, to DNA matches that you've seen through support? I know that we spoke about this a little bit earlier about, how it goes through our messaging system and if they're not an active user, but is there anything that people can do kind of to raise their chances of, being answered and finding a response?
Yeah, it depends on how you approach it. I once approached a distant relative with a screenshot. I wanted to tell them that, like, I wanted to use a screenshot over the email. And I said, hey, I saw in my tree that I have this family name and this family name, and you have these family names. Can I send you a screenshot of my tree? Can we liaise? And try to just, I start small, and I just try and establish what shared surnames I have. Like, I will put in 4 or 5 shared surnames from the spectrum, and I'll just say, hey, it'd be great to hear from you if you have any of these surnames in your tree. Maybe their privacy settings won't allow you to see if you have, certain things.
Okay, Valerie asks, if my granddaughter also had her DNA done, would it prove for certain our family connection? And would we need 2 separate DNA kits?
No, grandparent to grandchild, it most definitely would prove a family connection. You would need 1 kit for you to send in 2 samples, and 1 kit for the grandchild to send in 2 samples. Each person has to send in 2. We'll send 2 vials with each kit. So yes, you'll have to buy a kit for each of you. And grandparents are very close relatives. So if there's a genetic connection, it will most definitely show up.
And can you explain why we do 2 samples for every kit?
Oh, of course. Sometimes, very rarely happens, but a sample may fail to process in the lab. So instead of sending out a new kit and everyone paying for postage and customs, it has an automated process to select the second sample. We also like to keep a second sample in the event that we upgrade the platform or the product or offer a new product in future and people would like to purchase it. It would also save time and postage and customs money in that event. Always best to send at least 2 samples with a DNA kit.
Okay, so it's like an extra level of security.
Absolutely. Save you time and money.
Yes. Okay. Ada asks, can we know what the different chromosomes correspond to? Eyes, hair color, skin, etc.
Unfortunately, not. I will try and explain this as concisely as possible because I get asked this by people who are confused by their, pardon me, by their ethnicity estimates and why they don't look a certain way and why they don't look like certain people in their matching segment, in their DNA matches either. Like, you match a certain parent, but you don't share certain physical features. So these physical characteristics, they're called phenotypes. They are the observable physical characteristic of the genotype, of what we test for, genotype. But we don't test for these phenotypes. We don't offer tests to say if you have a phenotype for blonde hair or blue eyes or a certain, I don't know, skin tone or freckles or dimples. We don't, phenotypes we don't test for, unfortunately.
Okay.
Sorry, I have one more thing to add to that. Sorry. Also, phenotypes don't necessarily correlate to each genotype. So you may have a lot of siblings with a certain hair color, but your hair color is a little bit different. So again, one of the reasons we don't really test for phenotypes, they don't always match a genotype.
Okay. We have a question here from Peter. I think you covered this already, but maybe you could just clarify one more time. And Peter, feel free also to rewatch today's session after, because I believe Alex went into detail about other services and the amount of matches that you received from each of them. But I'll just read your question again as well. I've tested with both MyHeritage and Ancestry. I've uploaded my raw data from Ancestry to MyHeritage. I'm just wondering why I have more close matches using the Ancestry data as opposed to the MyHeritage data. There also seem to be more matches from the Ancestry data in general than compared to MyHeritage. So we talked about this before a little bit, the differences kind of in the amount of matches from the different tests, and how can you explain that?
I can elaborate on that a little bit more. I don't want to mention the names of any other companies. I remember that I mentioned that we have more conservative thresholds, and we would rather give less of those very small distant matches if it means we give you less false positives and less dead leads to follow up on. But I'm pretty sure, I think I also mentioned that even though most companies that test autosomal DNA, we test approximately 700,000 SNPs or SNPs, not all of us test the exact same one. And I'm pretty sure, obviously, no other company would tell me this, but I'm pretty sure that we all impute.
Oh, it looks like we have lost Alex here. He got disconnected. I hope we can get him back. Here he is.
Great.
So 1 second.
Yeah.
There we go. There we go. Just takes a minute. There's a little delay. We got you back.
Okay, good to be back. Thank you. So before I got disconnected, I mentioned the conservative thresholds. I mentioned that of the 700,000 SNPs that we test, we don't all test the same ones. I mentioned as well that we don't impute them in the same way. So you will get different matches. You may get more or less matches with different companies. I also mentioned in the previous question that with those real distant matches with us, we reserve the right to let you know if it's low confidence or medium confidence, because it's your time and energy researching your family history, and we want you to be as precise as possible. Again, I personally feel as a MyHeritage user, not as a worker, as a user, that it's great that we err on the side of caution, and it helps me focus on my research without chasing any dead leads, potential dead leads. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see. We have a question here from Denise. Why is it so important to test older people? She hears all the time, test your older relatives. So where does that come from? Why is that more important than the younger generation?
Well, I'll be as concise as possible. Older people, your grandparents, are a generation away from your great-grandparents. And let's say that one of your parents or both of your parents married each other from out of the gene pool. So you're a mix of both of your parents' gene pools. And it would be so awesome if any user has their grandparents still alive, if you can test people as far back up the spectrum as you can, because your grandfather is a combination of his own mom and dad. And he could also help. I've only been able to test my father, but testing all the relatives helps you reach out to their distant relatives as well, because he has some accurate fourth and fifth cousins that I just don't have, because half of my DNA comes from my mom. So if you have grandparents who are still alive, or even great-grandparents, I'd advise you to test them as soon as possible and broaden your spectrum.
Okay. Let's see. We have a question here. Is there a difference if I were to upload the results from another site versus testing directly with MyHeritage? So someone who, they've already tested with another service. So we don't necessarily tell them, you have to go buy a MyHeritage DNA kit now, save the money and use the DNA kit on somebody else who hasn't tested. Tell us more about this, Alex.
Okay, look, that's great. You're not going to get the exact same results that you would for our kit. I've already explained the three main reasons why you'll get different matches. And if you're happy to work off the data of another company, we are glad that we can provide you the service to do that on our platform. Just bear in mind, even with your ethnicity estimate and your genetic groups, not exactly the same genetic markers are tested, so you may get a little bit of a variation there as well. But again, if you're using our platform and you're getting results from it, by all means, just upload a kit from another company and do your best. I've got some serious DNA users who have a mix. They have different relatives in their family spectrum with MyHeritage kits and kits from other companies, and it works really well for them. So I'm really glad that we can offer people this opportunity to upload their raw DNA data and make use of us.
Okay, I see a lot of people are just joining now.
I'm so sorry, Esther. Okay.
Oh, you can hear me.
Yeah, every time you zone back in, the first 3 seconds, I can't hear you.
There's a little delay here with this Facebook Live, but we overcome the technical difficulties. So for those that are joining now, I just want to tell them, first of all, you can rewatch today's session as well as all of our sessions on the MyHeritage Facebook page under the videos section. So this will be available afterwards. So definitely feel free to watch Alex in action and rewatch it. And in case you missed anything, for anyone who's just joining now or who wants to rewatch today's session or any of our previous sessions. Let's see. We have a question here from Dorothy. Isn't it true that the matches with DNA are with living individuals? So how does that work with living versus deceased individuals?
In the system as it stands, you can only assign the DNA kit to someone who is marked as living in the tree. But things happen, and as time goes by, if a person in your tree has passed away and you're managing their kit, you can still manage their kit and keep their DNA up even if you mark them as deceased in the tree. But obviously the person would have given you the rights to their data. If it's one of your parents, heaven forbid, if they've passed away, they would have given you the rights to manage their data. So I always recommend when you reach out to someone, bear in mind that you're reaching out to the kit manager and not necessarily to the testee. Or you should try to reach out to the manager and clarify things.
Okay, let's see. We'll just take one last question before we go to our giveaway for today, which is a MyHeritage DNA kit to one lucky viewer. So we'll just answer Cindy's question. How many generations does DNA go back, or how many years? And this is actually a good question because we didn't even talk about genetic groups. So maybe you can just touch on that for a minute, Alex, as well.
Okay. Genetic groups falls under the ethnicity estimate feature. So it's a little bit different to the matching segments. If you want to know how far back matching segments go, it varies by how many DNA segments you have inherited with a certain ancestor. And all these companies, including us who test 700,000 markers, I'm happy to say that in many cases we can go back to a common ancestor 6 or 7 generations, and on a really good day, if you have a very distant match and it's not low confidence, I've heard of someone going back around 7 to 8, but it's too far back in a tree to verify. But yes, at the moment, we test up to as far back as 5th cousins, assuming no endogamy. Hopefully in future, as technology gets better, we will be able to expand upon this and test even further back. Genetic groups, it's a much more different feature. This came after our last ethnicity estimate upgrade, where we had, I think, over 1 million DNA users who gave us the informed consent to use their data to form genetic groups for this upgrade. I can show you mine and give you a little bit how it works. We couldn't go further back than the 1600s to map these genetic migration patterns. Just trying to think. So basically, a genetic group, I'm going to answer as concisely as possible again, because I think Esther wants to wrap up. Let's have a look at me. Sorry. No, not my home. DNA ethnicity estimate. Pardon
you
me.
just have
Welcome to the Finley website. Sorry. I have to share my screen.
Share. Yeah, we don't
Yeah, I'm
see
just
it.
getting to my ethnicity estimate first. Sorry, I thought.
Sure.
Great. Yeah, it's best that I go there first and jump directly into it. I'm sorry, I should have shared. Okay,
No
let's have a look at DNA results. So what happens is when you have these genetic groups, it's, again, not under the DNA matches feature. It's about certain ethnic markers that you have in common with other people who have their family tree data and their DNA data in our system. And due to their informed consent, you can track your migration patterns through these genetic groups. I have strong ones through my Ashkenazi side. And what we can do here is we can slide back. I don't think my actual Jewish family tree goes back to the 1600s. Definitely doesn't. But other users had data from the 1600s that you could slide in and start to track the migration pattern. I can also find what I could assume be the data from my family when they moved in, when they moved to parts of South Africa. And again, you can zoom in and you can focus more on specific places if you're familiar, if you've done your genealogical research on your family and where they come from. So this would most definitely be the same cluster as my maternal grandfather's group. This is also a pretty accurate group, 5052 for Ashkenazi Jews. Most of us do get it. They used, if you can see here on my screen, they used 36,000 kits, over 36,000 DNA kits to form this genetic group. And it links to almost 16,000 trees, family trees. So that's actually a really great genetic group. My dad also has one. Different people get different amounts. I'd like to show you his English one. So my dad is an Anglo-Scot, split down the middle. He got a nice one from England of British users. And they used, as you can see, 28,520 kits to make this migration group. And it's linked to 12,500 trees. You also have to take into account that this isn't like an ethnic tag, okay? Like, how do I explain that? You're not going to get a percentage score for a genetic group. You either have common ancestry with people in this group to get the group, or you don't. We also put low confidence on genetic groups if we feel that it's a low confidence group. And as you can see, people from different ethnicities and ethnic backgrounds can form a genetic group because they migrate together. Sorry. So the English are an admixture of both Insular Celtic DNA, Irish, Scottish, and Welsh, if your settings are in English. Northwest European, British people, they tend to be people with very strong Anglo-Saxon roots. And Scandinavians. Scandinavians can include the Irish from around Dublin, Scots with a lot of, I don't want to generalize, Scots with a lot of island heritage from where the Norwegians settled, and English users would have Scandinavian if they're Midlanders on account of the Danelaw, the period that the Danelaw was there and that the Danes settled in the Midland, what is now the Midlands of England. And this English group, we try and make an admixture of all those groups to show more common English users. But again, you get like different groups from different ethnicities migrating together throughout history. And you should explore your genetic groups to the best, as much as you can. Scroll down and see what different ethnic groups come in there. Scroll through the timeline and try and find dates and places. Sorry to cut out of DNA and go to formal genealogy. Formal genealogy has a lot to do with dates and places. So I advise you to scroll through the timeline and relate it to your own family tree and see if it does appear on the heat map and if it does help you put things in perspective when it comes to dates and places in your tree and your genetic group.
Jennifer wrote, this has been so interesting. Thanks. I never realized we had access to the migration patterns tool and timeline. That is so cool. So yes, definitely there are blog posts written about that as well. I suggest you go to blog.myheritage.com and you can search for, migration patterns and genetic groups and lots of great information available there, as well as lots of past Facebook Lives that we've done about these specific topics. So definitely feel free, Jennifer, and everyone out there to look at that. Alex, it's now our pleasure to give away a MyHeritage DNA kit.
Great.
So do you want to tell our audience what they get with the MyHeritage DNA kit? What type? Just an overview of the. I know you mentioned a lot of them, but just a
Okay.
summary of what they get.
I'm going to go through the important bits for your kit. Okay. When you get your kit, just before you send it off, you have to activate your kit. Okay, and you have to assign that kit to yourself or whoever you're testing in your tree. And we have, if you go to the MyHeritage help website, you can just type in, how do I activate my kit? And it'll explain to you how to use and input the MyHeritage code that starts with MH, followed by more places for digits and letters. I'm asking you as a support rep, please, please, please don't throw away the box, because in the bottom corner of the box, there's that barcode with your MyHeritage code. And if you have trouble activating your kit, I'm more than happy to help you, but I'm going to have to need that. You're going to have to give me that code so that I can help you. That code also comes with a activation card so that you can write the name in case you decide to test more people and just keep the card. You're going to write the name of whoever you're testing, and you're going to keep that activation card with the name and the kit in case you decide to move kits or you have a new website in future. A lot of the DNA stuff that I do day to day is actually helping people with their maintenance and admin of their DNA and their trees in our platform. Now, you're going to do that. Once it's activated and you've written the name on the card, you're going to see a couple of cotton swabs. So please don't eat or drink anything or brush your teeth or have a cigarette half an hour before sending us your sample. All we need is a cheek sample. It only takes about a minute to take one. I take each sample from each side, and it's like brushing your teeth just on your cheek. So you scrape it off for just under a minute. Remember to twist the sample so you can give us your buccal cells from your cheek. And you will then see a little instruction pamphlet on how to break it off inside the separation fluid. That's not water or saline solution. That's a special fluid that is really important to keep your buccal sample in stasis while it's in the post and it's on the way to the lab. Also, please try and only store it in room temperature. That helps a lot. Remember, you got to send us 2 samples as well. So you're going to get 2 vials. And that's it. Once you've activated it and you're confident that you've sent off 2 samples, and please don't spill the separation fluid, whatever you do. Once you've activated it and you're confident that you've taken 2 good samples, you can send them off. And we look forward to having another user learn about their past and their self.
Yeah, fantastic. So that lucky user today, who we get to give away a MyHeritage DNA kit to, is Caroline Stenstrom Toll. And Caroline wrote to us, and she said in the comment section, I found out that my paternal grandfather wasn't the one we thought. We are Swedish several hundred years back in the church records, but when we got the DNA results back from testing my father, it was very surprising. He was only 39% Swedish. Now it's my quest and mission to find out who my grandfather was, and I have so far got in contact with DNA matches who I have contacted with almost on a daily basis, trying to solve how we are related. I'm hoping to find out who my grandfather was and hopefully get some new cousins and maybe aunts and uncles as well, and someday to meet them all. So congratulations, Caroline. Please message us on our Facebook page to claim your prize, and we'll be sending that to you in the mail. And I just wanted to give a shout out also to another user who wrote a really lovely comment here. Alex, if that's okay, I'll just read this one as well. Martha Stevenson Wright, who wrote to us, not a question, but I'd like to share something my heritage has done for me. When the war in Ukraine started, I wondered if I had DNA matches there. So I used the place filter and found several. I wrote to them all to give them a little support and let them know that the world is here for them. I have now become close to one of my matches, and I'm following her journey through the war, trying to keep her spirits up. It's been a wonderful and life-changing experience. We plan to figure out how we are related one day when this is all over. So that's just lovely, Martha. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. What a nice story, and I think it just kind of epitomizes how DNA and family history just brings us all a little bit closer together in general.
Indeed, that's really a wonderful story. Well done, Martha.
Yeah, so thank you everyone for coming and joining us today. Alex, thank you for your expertise. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Esther, and thanks to everyone for your questions. I had a really great time, and I hope I was of some use to many of you, and I look forward to answering more questions in future, and I'll probably hear from some of you over the email in the weeks to come.
Fantastic. So have a great day, everyone, and thank you all for joining us today.